test your backups. Do some test restores because the goal is the restore, not the backup. I can say this all day long because a lot of people get hung up on creating backups and not realizing that that's just part of the way. You don't spend money, create a budget, buy software, do all this stuff merely so that you can create backups. All right? Merely so that you can create backups. No, you do it so that you can restore your data in case you lose it, right? So in order to know that you can restore your data, or at least have a lot of confidence that you can restore your data, you need to test the restore process. All right? So performing tests to restore is essential to ensure you have dependable, reliable backups. If you can restore from your backup plan worked. If you can't, it failed. If you don't know it can, you failed. Okay. So, for example, test your system disk image. You know, boot up your computer with the system, your copy, your system image disk instead of the one that's normally in there. Take that one out, put your system image and see if you'll boot. Will it boot? Can you do stuff? And then turn your machine off and put the other one back in. Right? You know, I can boot with this disk. If my hard drive failed, I can take the system image that I created, I can stick it in my computer, and I can boot it up, and I can continue working. All right? I have a system disk image on a USB attached hard drive. And it's just funny story. And something that I'm gonna pass on to you because this is something you might be aware of because I never thought about it before. But I had the disk, I created an image with another software. Remember the supplemental backup? I created a disk image with a partition managing software that I have by Paragon Software, Hard Disk Manager, version 17, I think. Okay. Anyway, I created a disk image and I rebooted my machine and it came up like it normally does. And I had installed some software, and sometimes you install software wants you to reboot your machine. So I did that. But my disk image on that USB hard drive was still connected to my computer. So what happened was my computer booted from my disk image, but I didn't realize it. Okay, I didn't realize it because everything was normal. Remember, it's a copy of my hard drive, and I had just recently did it days before. So I didn't notice, but I did notice that I thought I installed this program. Okay, let me do this again, blah, blah, blah. And then a little later, I realized what happened. I had inadvertently tested my disk image. All right, so that's important to do that because you know that you can start your machine. You have that confidence that you can start your machine. All right. Restore testing may also involve using a rescue media disk. Remember we talked about that? Boot up your machine with the rescue media and see what you can see. See if you want it to restore, if it's available, if you can get to it, things like that. All right. That's very, very important that you do the restore testing, but be sure to protect your original data because you don't want to overwrite stuff. All right. So just remember, it's very important that you do test restores. Now, you can do a file folder restore. All right. Let's say you want to just do a test on your backup and you just pick random files to restore or random folders to restore. All right. No problem. You go through the process of restoring in the application that you use, but you restore to a different destination than the original. All right. Restore to another destination. Some even suggest that you can rename the original. All right. and do a restore and see if it works. All right. But I like to just restore it to a different location and access the files that are in there if I can read them and so forth and so on. Okay, great. This works. All right. So that's how you can test, files and folders. Just randomly restore them to a different location, or somehow restore them. If you come up with another method, but in a way that does not, you don't lose the current data that you have. Now, image restore testing, which I described earlier, but what happened to me, you can do an image restore testing of your disk, of your disk, by just plugging that disk into your computer and booting from it, if it's a system disk. And usually you create an image of your system disk, all right? You just try to boot from it. Take your old, you may have to open up your computer if you can boot from that. If you have a fast enough USB hard drive, if your disk image, let's say it's on a USB hard drive. In my case, it happened to be an SSD drive, solid state drive. And so the performance was so good that I thought I had booted up with my regular system. All right. But if you have that situation where you have a good performance USB attached hard drive, then just, plug it in when you boot up your machine during the post. When it's booting up, when it's starting up, you want to get to your boot menu, however you do it on your computer with Dell systems. I believe it's F12. And you just select that particular USB drive in the boot device menu and see if your machine will boot from it. Now, if you have a regular mechanical hard drive, I don't recommend it. Doing it that way, it probably would work, but it would be very, very slow. Unless, again, you have a high performance hard drive. Okay, so you want to do that image restore testing, just somehow boot up with that drive. All right, and I'm going to have some videos where I show you how to do that. I'm going to do that just so that you have that reference. All right, if you're comfortable with working inside your computer, then it's great. It's easy to take out a drive these days and replace it, to do your testing. All right, you always want to review your backup plan. We talked about that. I mentioned that earlier. You always want to review your backup plan. Make sure the backup plan itself is adequate. Maybe things change in your organization. Maybe you're getting a different type of client now, adding it to your quote portfolio, and your backup needs are changed. Maybe you have clients now that have more sensitive information, more critical. Maybe you're generating more critical data or what have you, and you want to make sure your backup plan is consistent with whatever changes have occurred. So you always want to review your backup plan, check your strategy. Is the strategy still valid? And of course, you want to evaluate the solution that you're using, like I mentioned before. But the bottom line here is just keep on top of that. Don't just assume that once you start with a backup plan, you'll always be there. For example, for me, I've been using Acronis for several years now. I've used iDrive for a long time. I had stopped using iDrive for a little bit. I'm still using Acronis. I was just looking for another product to see maybe I can something better. I don't know. But Acronis is really, really good. And I'll tell you more about that later. Or you can find out more on my website. Okay, but anyway, review your backup plan. Make adjustments to the plan or the budget as necessary, right? So that you can continue to have secure, valid, reliable, sufficient restores. You thought I was going to say backup, didn't you? Well, that's true. You want to have good, reliable backups. But remember, backups are not the goal. The goal is what? Restoring. Okay, guys, I think that is it for this part. We've gone over a lot to get you to build your backup strategy. We talked about different components. We talked about your backup plan. We've gone through a lot of things that you need to know to build your backup, your backup plan, your backup implementation. All right? Okay, let's move on.